The Bambu Lab A1 Mini has been with me now for about 4 or 5 weeks, and I've got some thoughts on it so far. So is it a good printer for those who are printing off like tabletop terrain and just stuff like that? Well, I'll go through that in this video. Now before I get started, this was purchased by myself. It's not been sent over to me by Bambu Lab or anything like that. So for all of those who like to jump in these comments and talk about selling your soul, fortunately nobody will buy mine. So yeah, I have to buy my own stuff. So for those of you who don't know what the Bambu Lab A1 Mini is, it's basically a smaller version of the standard A1, or something like your P1S. It's a really tiny little machine, and everybody was kind of confused when they first announced it because everybody wanted a larger Bambu Lab printer. And then they gave us this, which is smaller. And when I say smaller, it's kind of hard to overstate how much smaller it actually is. And in fact, I'll just show you. So in this hand, we have the build plate for the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. And in this hand, we have the build plate for basically every other Bambu Lab printer. It is such a difference. Hopefully the light glare, you can see through that. It is a really small printer, but in actually using it, I've been really surprised by how much you can fit on this build plate. So it is a smaller and far cheaper printer than something like the P1P, the P1S. So when it came out, it was a really nice budget option. You can also get the AMS light system to go with it as well. So that way, if you're into multi-filament printing, you can be able to mix up all of your colors and everything like that. And again, that is much more of a budget option versus something like the standard AMS unit that you got with the P1P, P1S, and all of the more premium machines. Now, getting this out of the box, I was really careful because I didn't want to bend anything on the back like was happening with the A1 units because, you know, we don't want to set them on fire. But getting it set up is really easy. There's a couple of bits to remove, a couple of bits just to set up, and then once you're all plugged in, you are pretty much good to go. I was really surprised by how small this was, and there's probably going to be a theme that comes up throughout this video, so I do apologise for ranting about that, but it is a really small compact printer. And honestly, a bit of a spoiler straight off here, if you've not got an FDM printer, if you're resin 3D printing or something like that and you want something to go along with it, or if you're just curious about getting an FDM printer, I wish that the A1 Mini was my first FDM printer because it is such a nice small compact device and so easy to use. But getting past that spoiler. So once it was set up, it was time to try out a few different prints. And over the past couple of weeks, I have printed off a whole host of different things with this. I've done things like my articulating prints because my kids absolutely love them and they all come off perfectly on this. No problems at all. Everything sticks to the print bed nicely. Everything comes out nicely and I get some really good quality. I also figured I should do some terrain for this as well, considering that's pretty much what my channel's about. Tabletop gaming and terrain and all of that jazz. And again, I was really surprised by how much I actually managed to fit on there. There hasn't been any terrain that I've found in my just day-to-day use that I would normally want to print on something like my P1S or on the A1 before it got sent back that doesn't fit on this, which really surprised me. I printed off all this sci-fi terrain, so they have all these like smaller buildings, some medium buildings, some larger buildings as well. And again, they all fit. The larger building was touch and go. It just about fit on that print bed, but it did fit, and that's the main thing. Things like these fantasy houses as well, all of that fit on there, and I didn't have to do any scaling or messing around or putting them diagonal. Everything so far has fit really nicely. Not only does it fit, but it comes out looking great as well. So I get the same quality on this as I do on something like my P1S. And when you consider the price difference between those machines, that's a big win. However, it's not all sunshine and unicorns and all of that lovely stuff because it doesn't fit everything on there. And the best way to find out if this printer is going to be right for you in terms of the size is just download Bambu Studio yourself. You can set up an A1 Mini in there and just download a few file types that you would normally want to try and print or something that you've printed in the past and see if it fits. If it fits in software, it will fit in hardware, and that's kind of the rule of thumb to go with on this. There are a few things that don't fit on this that I do print in like my everyday today use. I was doing these like hex wall tiles and they didn't fit, for example. I've also been working on these hex tabletop terrain bases as well, and they didn't fit, they were just a little bit too large. So there are a couple of things on there that I would normally use that if I only had this machine, I just wouldn't be able to print off. So again, bear that in mind, try it out for yourself and see if it fits. So print quality is fantastic. One thing to mention as well is the print speed is around about 15 to 20% slower than something like the P1S. So if you are looking for super fast prints, it's still very fast, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite as fast as some of the other Bambu Lab machines. So now a quick moment to talk about build quality. Obviously I've mentioned it's nice and it's small and it's compact, but there's a couple of things that I dislike about the machine. The first one is that cable on the back. Not the one that goes from the machine to the heat bed, you know, the one that was causing issues with the standard A1 unit, but the one that plugs into your mains power in your wall. It's not detachable, and pretty much every other 3D printer that I've used has a detachable cable. And I think that's a good thing, because if they fray, if they get knocked, if they get damaged, it's just easy. You pull out the cable and plug a new one in. This one's built into the machine, which just makes me worry about the longevity of the machine. Granted, I'm not really moving mine, so it's probably not going to be an issue. But if you're somewhere where your cable might get knocked or frayed or anything like that, just, you know, it's worthwhile bearing in mind. It's not the end of the world, it's just something I picked up on. The other thing as well is it has a really nice colour touchscreen, the same as what you find on the standard A1, which is like night and day better than the one that comes on the P1S or the P1P, you know, that awful little Kindle screen. On this, you've got this nice little touchscreen. It's really nice to interact with. It just makes using the machine itself so much nicer than just always having to rely on the software on like your phone or on your laptop. One problem I found, and this might be just my machine and the calibration of that touchscreen, it's not very responsive. Compared to the A1, which had a really nice touchscreen as well, and was really responsive and easy to use, on mine it seems to slightly register my press, slightly under where I'm actually pressing it, which can become kind of annoying. Again, not the end of the world, but just a little gripe there. And two things to talk about on the actual build plate itself. Lining it back up when you place it on there is really easy compared to the other machines. I don't know if it's just me being incompetent, but on the A1 and the P1S, I always find it hard to line it back up with the magnetic bit, and I kind of have to pull it back off and then place it back on and try and align it. Never seems to work too well. And the thing is, it's because on the P1S and basically everything else, you've just got this bit that sticks out. But on the A1 Mini, you've got two little bits, and it's really easy to line everything up with the top. Why don't they copy this for every other one? It just makes it so much simpler. The other thing I will note is, I think it's because it only does a tiny little bit of an extrusion on the bottom here. So before it starts printing, it'll do like a little bit of extrusion there, and then it'll go on to printing. And on every other machine, it's quite easy, just you peel it off and it comes off. On mine, on the Mini, it's really difficult to get off sometimes. It feels like it is properly baked on there. It takes a lot of prizing off. And I've still got a bit stuck on there at the moment. So yeah, again, not the end of the world. Could just be my unit. And it doesn't really take much time to clean it, but just something to note. Like the standard A1, this has the annoying poo flinging issue. So basically, if you're doing any color changes, for example, using the AMS light unit, when it's doing some extrusion before it starts printing, anything like that, what it'll do is it'll poop into this little tray here, and then it flings it. And it's really messy. It's not the end of the world. You can get like a little box to catch it all on there. Mine flings it to the P1S that it's next to, but it does fling its poop. So just something to be aware of. It can get messy and bits will go everywhere. The A1 Mini also has a little camera there with a little light next to it, so if you want to do some time-lapse like videography, you can do. The video footage does look a little bit like a potato. It's kind of warped, it's in a really odd position, and I just don't like it. Compared to something like my P1S, which is night and day better, it's really frustrating. However, you can log in through the app and you can see what's happening at a time, so if you want to check and make sure that your print isn't failing mid-print, you can load up the app and see what's happening there, which is always a bonus. Another really nice feature about the A1 Mini and the A1 as well, compared to something like the P1P and the P1S, is it's really easy to swap the nozzle on these. So if you're going to be swapping back and forth between like a 0.2mm nozzle, a 0.4 or anything else, all you need to do is you pop off this front panel, which is a little bit flimsy and I always feel like it's going to break eventually. But once you pop that off, you literally just unclip the nozzle, slide it out and slide a new one in. You don't need to unscrew anything. It takes about 30 to 60 seconds and you're done. It's really easy. Now, I don't have the AMS light unit for this. It got sent back with my A1 unit because that was part of the recall. And to be honest, I love the AMS light and it will work exactly the same on this as it will do on something like the A1. The only reason I didn't pick it up for the A1 Mini is because A, it takes up space. Ultimately, that will be larger than the printer itself. So just bear that in mind. You'd be getting a really small compact printer and then this big, large AMS unit. But I also have the AMS for my P1S, so I kind of didn't need to double it up. In use, I've always really liked the AMS light, and in fact, I actually prefer the AMS light unit for the A1 and the A1 Mini versus the standard AMS. Again, that's more down to preference, but it's a lot cheaper. I feel like it works better with different types of spools. I have far less issues if a filament snaps. I don't have to take the whole thing apart to try and pull it out there. But again, it's down to your preference. But if you are wanting to do multicolour and multi-filament printing, then get the AMS light unit with this as well. So hopefully that's a bit of a short and sweet video about the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. In my opinion, it's my favourite filament printer that I've used. In fact, it's probably my favourite printer out of everything to do with 3D printing that I've used so far. I think this is the perfect printer for anybody who is into like wargaming, tabletop gaming, Legions Imperialis. If you're playing Warhammer Legions Imperialis, this is a really good machine because ultimately what you get here is a pretty budget option that you can start printing off almost any types of tabletop terrain and get it onto your table really quickly. Things like Legions Imperialis, where you're looking for more bespoke type buildings, and I'll have a couple of examples on screen here that I've printed, you can get these printed really quickly in great quality, and you don't have to spend huge prices to try and get them. If this had been my first 3D printer or my first FDM printer, I'd have been very, very happy. And honestly, it's really easy to use. Once you get it set up and once you get to grips with the software, there's not much more to get used to compared to something like a resin printer, which takes a lot more dialing in, or some other FDM printers as well. It's a really easy to use printer, and for anybody who is into wargaming and tabletop terrain and stuff like that, I think it's a great option. Like I said, it's worthwhile. Download Bambu Studio if you're unsure, and just download a couple of models and see if they fit, and if they do, then you could be off to the races. I'll have a full review of this unit in a couple of months. I want to spend some more time with it, make sure it doesn't set on fire and all of that lovely stuff. But yeah, I just want to spend a lot more time with it just to make sure everything works as the way I expect it. If there's anything that comes up that I wasn't expecting, for example. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably have that out in a couple of months. So let me know any questions that you've got about this unit. Like I said, I really like it. I'm very, very impressed with it. And all in all, can't go too far wrong with this. Hope that video has helped some of you out there if you're interested in picking something like this up. If it has, hit the like and subscribe button. Really helps the channel to grow. And fingers crossed, I will see you in the next one. Bye.